Hi everyone, welcome back to another Fried Philosophy video. Having been advised by a mental health professional to do so, I must warn you ahead of time that the subject of today's video involves suicide. Now ideally the content of the book I'm going to be talking about is meant to stave away suicidal thoughts, but still, it is just a book. I hope you'll stick around to find out what Camus said in his Myth of Sisyphus. Suicide to Camus is a problem, a really big problem. The reason why he considers it such a great philosophical issue is because it begs the question of whether or not life has meaning. Now, he wishes to solve this problem without the use of any metaphysical values. That is, without the use of any spiritual or extraneous non-physical belief systems. The work was meant to inspire someone to live and create in an actively hostile environment like our absurd universe. He states, "Judging whether or not life is worth living amounts to answering the fundamental question of philosophy. Suicide is a confession that life is too much for you, or that you do not understand. It is not worth the trouble." So, could this be true? Camus doesn't think so. Even if the universe is godless, random, chaotic, and absurd, even in the realm of what he considers to be absurdism, suicide is not legitimate, because it doesn't solve the issue that it poses. The only reason a lot of people are still alive is simply out of habit. Often suicide can be the realization of the unacceptable, a feeling which can compound the mind into a wish not to exist. Because if there's a lack of reason to be found in our lives, that same lack of reason could also seem to justify ending that life. This feeling of wanting to die voluntarily, it's a contrast to an unattainable reality, an idealized memory, or a life that one is not living but wishes to be. This contrast from your reality to your idealized existence, that's Camus' feeling of the absurd. A field of existence that cannot be explained or reconciled. One that promises nothing but conscious dissatisfaction, no matter how things are going for you. But the absurd only exists when consciousness comes in contact with a universe it knows it could never understand. It exists nowhere else besides this relationship. The absurd is born of this confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world. And so death is what would bring the absurd to an end. So generally speaking, does the absurd dictate death? It's a really hard question because no one alive has that knowledge. If so, they would have survived the act of completed suicide, and that's a contradiction. But when faced with the absurd, Camus supposed that we only had two real options. That is, recovery or suicide. But see, Camus insists that killing yourself isn't the only method of suicide. There's also philosophical suicide, wherein one attempts to escape from the absurd, using things like religion or hope, twisting the absurd into the notion of a caring God that it could never understand. Because honestly, some minds couldn't handle it otherwise. Philosophical suicide is a kind of escapism. The practice of retreating from reality into some contrived or constructed fantasy that can't be proven. In his absurd reasoning, it doesn't do for Camus to try to build the universe up into any tangible conception, especially not one that would favor humanity. That would be insincere. Just because something's comforting doesn't mean that it's true. Remember, Camus wants to find a method of being, a way to reconcile existence without the use of God or metaphysics. A reason to exist that is not predicated on any higher power besides man himself. His ideal is the absurd man, a person who's not negating the metaphysical world, but one who's also contributing nothing to it. One who lives without appeal in an absurd state of existence, where we are directed to the immediate, the presence. In surrender to the unacceptable, absurd universe that surrounds us, we are then able to value all aspects of existence, including the ones that we could never understand. There's something beautiful about the idea that we are not caused, that our purpose is our own to craft, and that suicide, while always an option, is ultimately the most inappropriate response to the absurd, as life, and what is meant by life, is equally and entirely our own. Without some mysterious peon to fall back on, it's entirely on ourselves. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, you should check out my book Writer. It's very inspired by the works of Albert Camus, and you can get it at my website for free by clicking the link here. This is Ryan Starbloke, and I implore you to have a good day.